And we're live. Hey, good evening, everybody. Scott Stevens here as we take a look at the Thursday edition of Scott's Weather. And we're going to start off with a little something different. I suppose I need to share my screen a little bit before that, but we're doing, I guess I want to say a little bit of housekeeping, because what we're doing is kind of changing from what I had been able to do is broadcast on my own personal profile page. But what that needs to do is move to kind of an influencer page, or instead of a profile, but to a page. And so I've developed a page. It was been up maybe 7 days now, called the Scott Stevens page. And if you go ahead and go over there and like that, get notified when we do these shows, then we can kind of keep a little more in touch. I've got an interesting show coming up on this Monday for Another Perspective, where I want to talk about how I got to where I am in the weather community, and just kind of a little bit more of a background on me and some things going on there, just because we had some fascinating interest on it on another weather show about 2 days ago. So that's kind of what's happening. And this is the show. This is just kind of where I'm sitting right now, the computer gear where we got it set up, and then we'll eventually get some banners and addresses and so forth in there. But this is what's imminently looming. All right, let's hit the weather. We'll start with Australia like we have the last couple of days, and dry old, same old, same old. All the weather happening between the South Island of New Zealand and then over to New South Wales. With the rest of the continent a bit on the dry side. That started off the winter kind of wet, but things have certainly changed over the last while. And what I am seeing, we've got audio, that all looks good. So parts of eastern Queensland got soaked with more than a month's worth of rain in the last 2 days, and that was that big rain that we kind of highlighted on the Jetstream map a little bit back. And that probably just adds to Melbourne's wet start to the winter. So looking good in that direction. All right, other big weather news as we begin to hit the oceans from severe weather Europe. Really nothing happening in Europe, but major Category 3 Hurricane Douglas rapidly intensifying, and we'll look at where the models want to take that as we move towards this coming weekend. Yeah, we are. Let me see. All right, let me see if we can add another. Boom. Interesting. We just got to check in to see where we are. Okay. Huh. That's odd, because we should have been there all along. Okay. All right. Save. Boom. It's a little unusual how things end up. We're using StreamYard as our platform to go live, and they're always making little changes, and we're also making page changes and so forth here as well. So just kind of getting through all of that. All right, good to see you guys there. But yeah, so my page, the Scott Stevens page, is literally where we'll begin to start to do the broadcast, and then we share them out into the other groups that I participate in, and then you can use that and share as well. And with that, Facebook, for its blessing and its curses, allows us analytics. It allows us to see participation and other things that just cannot happen from a profile page. So that's kind of why that has happened. All right, so back to weather. And I have this gut feeling that the next, 23 July, between now and maybe 10 August, we'll probably see 4 or 5 significantly sized tropical storms. And we'll get to the reason why. I'm having that impression, and unfortunately, I'm not alone in that. So what we'll do is we'll start here on Twitter and roll on through the kind of regular Twitter weather influencers, and there's good old Douglas. At this point in time, it was a Cat 3 and continuing to go with winds approaching 100 miles an hour, and the cone of variability, the forecast cone, takes it directly into the Hawaiian Islands as we get towards this weekend. So that is something I know the folks there on those islands are they've got their eye on this baby, because this is a significant storm. And when these guys start this far south, there's a lot of potential energy for them to scoop up as they begin to move into the northern latitudes, and the spin, the Coriolis effect, the vorticity, and just the potential, because they've had their genesis deep in the warm water. So there are multiple facets to allow those storms to become significant weather events. Tropical storm Gonzalo expected to become a hurricane Thursday. This is now 19 hours old. We'll check on this in a moment, but its path gratefully takes it south of Puerto Rico, the island of Hispaniola, but Jamaica is kind of at least in that cone of potentiality. The National Hurricane Center indicating that the Tropical Depression 8 has formed over the Gulf of Mexico. This is going to bring some big rains to the mid-Texas coast as we move through the weekends. We'll look at those rainfall totals also in a minute. And then this guy talking about the ECMWF, the European model, and indicating or lamenting, I suppose would be the better term, that the disruptive mountains just did not seem to be integrated into this model's forecast as it has this depression as a potential, a very strong storm still deep in the Rio Grande Valley, and that isn't a possibility. There's just too much terrain there that would tear it to pieces. Heavy rain from TD8, Tropical Depression 8, will become a tropical storm. Hannah will bring a flood risk to the U.S. Gulf Coast. So from Victoria, Texas to Corpus Christi and not quite down to South Padre Island and then inland. And these are locations that, let's just pop over here because I've got it readily available, have kind of had some decent moisture. So their drought has been greatly reduced over the last 2-3 months. So it's not that they need the water, but they're still on the dry side. So those drainage basins, those rivers and catchment basins can probably use a good little soaking. All right, this is an interesting map. We've got the states here, South America here, the Atlantic through here, and then Africa. What we see here is a huge area of subsiding air, downward sinking air. And in basics of meteorology, it is the updraft, the lifting of the air that reinforces, builds, creates the suitable environment for a storm to manifest. And we have this massive zone rolling off of Africa. Remember, they've had incredible rainfall totals over the last while, through May and June and continuing through July. But this zone of incredibly favorable uplifting air, on a continental kind of scale, is headed towards the tropical Atlantic. Meaning, and this is why I kind of said off the top, I'm kind of concerned that through the end of July, through at least the first half of August, it's going to be kind of hairy down in those directions. The tropical Atlantic wave train is in full gear with the weather models consistently developing another storm for the end of July. And this one is north of Puerto Rico. We've got a nice little high sitting here, but that means also Cuba is kind of under the gun. So things from last week to this week have really kind of taken a turn. This is a fascinating GIF. I'm going to see if I can't zoom in here. So what this is, it's called an ensemble. And they'll run maybe 48 versions of the same math with just slightly different inputs or slightly different tweaks to the formula, to the math, and then just run the whole lot of them. And sometimes they'll average them all together, or over months and years, they'll pick out the one that verifies the most accurately. So what this guy has done is basically using all those ensembles, and then every tropical storm that the ensembles create, he has plotted. And honestly, this is the first time I've seen this map, so this is kind of cool for me, and that's probably why I'm sharing it. But the Caribbean's going to be busy as we get to, let's see, they're starting to show up next week. So right around the end of the month, as we get to the 1st of August, it's going to be kind of a scary to do down in that direction. All right, let's unzoom, and then we can get back out of that and then see what's left. Unzoom yet again. And this is what happens when lightning strikes. Not always, but sometimes. A tall tree, and this is probably why you're advised not necessarily to sit under a tree with lightning's around. Oh! And not so often do we get that kind of a video from that. So that's just kind of cool. I had to share it, not to scare you, but, weather geeks, the whole thing of weather and why weather makes news is because something scary has happened. It's just kind of the default thing of weather. Otherwise, it would just be sunny or a little bit of rain. That's just kind of what the weather's all about. So the tropics are lighting up. I don't see anything new within the last 2 hours. They're kind of just waiting for Hannah to show up in this particular time. So what I wanted to do with this guy, Hawaiian Islands, this is the Pacific, and the states are out here. And this is the wind at about what they call the 10-meter level, or about 30 feet off the ground. And I want to roll this up, see if the screen is just large enough to do this. But what I want to watch is this guy, Douglas, then make a beeline for the Hawaiian Islands. Now, the morning run had Douglas making landfall right there, just literally into Maui. This time, this run, it's maybe 60 miles, maybe a little bit more than that offshore, and this would be probably in their time, maybe midnight Sunday night, rolling on into Monday. These islands, especially in the North Shore, are going to be hammered with incredible surf, and that a lot of winds coming from the south side of the island. So the rains would be on the south side of the islands in the orographic effect, but then heavy winds coming in on the north. All right, good to see you guys coming on in there. Yeah, Robin, been caught near one of those falling trees. I can say that I have not. I do not have that in my resume. 100-mile-an-hour winds, Karen, probably with Douglas and or Gonzalo. That's 100 miles an hour is just Cat 3, so that's going to be a scary thing one way or the other. All right, as we move on through, what happens with Douglas continues to just kind of trace the whole islands, and this will get refined as we get into the weekend, and certainly by Friday. Those warnings will have been up. The people will have hit their Costco's, hit their Sam's Club, got their bottled water, gasoline for the generators. You just got to be prepared. So what we're seeing stateside, and I'm kind of doing this backward, is that we're anticipating kind of the trough continue out west with a little bit cooler, with the heat going on from the southeastern states. And then we just begin to see these deeper, colder. This is an absolutely fall-time event hitting the north coast of Alaska as those temperatures drop down to 20, 25 degrees cooler than normal, and then just kind of unsettled weather off the coast. But more importantly is that this opens up the Gulf. Especially, I need to be back in here. Here's our high. This is Sunday night, Monday morning, Sunday night, Monday morning. And this is unsettled areas where we'd see those heavy rains, and without a really strong wind current to drive the rains, it'll be a slow rainer along that Gulf Coast of Texas. All right, here's Douglas. You can see the nice eye formed, and here's the Hawaiian Islands. All of this orange is very dry air in here, and then it's kind of bringing its own humidity with it, its own fuel. But the water temperatures are warm enough, apparently, because we have a storm at this particular side. Stateside, here's what could potentially be Hannah, and then its target going to be the South Texas coast. The southwestern monsoon kind of in place, a nice little slug of cool air moving through the Great Lakes states. But before that cooler, drier air arrives, of course, the humidity, the rain has got to be squeezed out from Tennessee through West Virginia, all the way through the New England coast. As we pop on in and look at the southwest, nice rains down to Sierra Vista and far southern Arizona. Tucson with some good rains this morning. The southern monsoon has been, honestly, almost a non-event in that area, but I enjoy seeing these thunder showers that can last more than 1, 2, 3 sweeps of the radar. Some of them, they just pop up and then boom, they're hammered and they're gone. So they're just not really able to get the draft and the rain going. It starts and then some invisible energy shows up and the rain ends and the cloud looks like it is this beautiful cumulonimbus, and then it just turns into this hazy, fuzzy, wispy, like Rapunzel's hair coming out of the sky. That's an ugly sight. But where I wanted to go with this is this guy, Tucson, with some 1.25 2.25 inch rainfalls on the west side of the city, almost 3 out near Tucson Mountain Park. So there's some good rains, and these guys have been incredibly ingenious in how they capture their runoff water in and around Tucson, kind of redirecting it into their zero-scaped yards and so forth. So they've been very ingenious and how they have captured and use and reuse and use once again the rainwater that they do get. So there's no doubt that they had a bunch of runoff today down into Tucson. North Texas Panhandle, enjoying some nice rains there as well. They got a little bit of relief over the last 2 weeks from their ongoing and yet deepening drought. So they had some 1.5, 2-inch rainfall totals, and that's enough, just as long as it doesn't come too quickly. Let's pop out here and look at the national image, because I don't think I've got that. So nearly every state, maybe the exception being Wisconsin, Minnesota, and Washington State, seeing a little bit of rain. So that's on the good side with as dry as things are and have been. Here are those temperatures, 102 degrees as you get into far southern South Dakota, southwest South Dakota. Let's see if that's still the case. 101, cool off just a bit in the last hour. So there's some heat trapped in the upper Midwest. Wow, boy, the Great Lakes states, what a great weekend, unless you want to be waterbound up there, where you don't tend to want to get into those lakes because, they're just kind of chilly. A wetsuit is one thing, but, beaching and, going, the kids running out there and playing, it's another thing with temperatures in the 70s. but the humidity is returning back up into Canada, and they have been wet, wet, wet. So that's going to keep them, very, very, very soggy. The crops are doing good. The water's all good until you need a dry spell to begin to harvest. The drought has seen a little bit of relief, mainly in North Texas, portions of Kansas and Nebraska, and even in eastern Iowa and Illinois. But otherwise, there just hasn't been a lot of focused rain in those locations. Scattered showers, a half inch to an inch, just isn't enough to make a dent in it. As we look at the map, here we are today. Again, the green from coast to coast with the severe weather risk shaded in red. Come tomorrow, that is confined down to the southwest, and there's no storm chasers down there. They're just photographers of opportunity in those locations. And then as we move into Sunday, that severe weather risk moves into the far, far northern Mississippi Valley, and they do have Hannah plotted right here, about to make landfall. So that's going to be that'll be a festive event for those folks as they look forward to their weekend. As far as record heat, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, nobody until Monday. Then we see a few spots in and around D.C. Dulles at about 97 degrees. Their old record 98, set back on 93. A few warm nights, maybe a cool nighttime low in and around the ocean areas, the seaside areas in and around Los Angeles. That's Oxnard at 69 degrees, which is just 1 degree above the high, which is nearly a 100-year record. So the big story continues to be the high in the middle of the nation, but what that does is that opens up the easterlies, the tropical easterlies, and that just keeps the risk. There it is. Here's Hannah right here, this little, what we call an inverted trough, because it's upside down. A regular trough is forecast with a low up at the north, or displayed with the low pressures up to the north. This guy, it's with the south, so the trough is backwards. It's called an inverted trough. And that manifests and begins to roll up the Rio Grande Valley. And there's plenty of tall mountains, lots of tall mountains as you get down to Monterrey in northern Mexico. So these could be some big, big rains for those locations. And it's the rainy season. You got to expect it. You just have to. The Northeast stays cool. As we move into next week, a deep low sits in the St. Lawrence River Valley with highs mostly 60s and 70s. And then the high begins to let go of Oklahoma, Texas, and then refashion itself out west. But we're at 186 hours out here. This is Friday next week. And it looks like it hangs out. So if we're looking for some hot weather anywhere in the nation, it's going to be and remain in the Mountain West. But for this weekend, the news has to be, it just has to be these tropical events. The first one, we're going to watch Douglas as it comes ashore and then hits the Hawaiian Islands. And then we're going to have Hannah, as we'll be dealing with that. Let's see if we can't get there. Yeah, there's Hannah. So, and then Gonzalo, that's going to be next week. Some islands will be under the gun, but it's going to be the tropics. So that's going to be our focus as we move through the weekend. All right, let's see what's going on over here. Mike saying, hey, Arctic Oscillation and Anomalies are cooking. Indeed they are. Indeed they are. Let's see what I can probably rustle up for that. Let's come back over here to, I would need to do this, wouldn't I? I would need to share it back with you. Let's see what we can look up, because this mic is honestly kind of fascinating. We'll come to here, and then I want to run to Global and Continental. I want to go to Continental North America. In fact, I'll probably just go to Global Northern. And look at that big old high. Look at that big old red high, that huge anomaly. That's what the red indicates, is the anomalous ridge of high pressure. It kind of takes a break. It gets dissolved, and it's split. But look at all these lows that begin to kind of take shape, but they all have to dance around that high. And as long as that high is in place, we're stuck with it as the blocking feature that everything has to rotate around. But as we begin to see a little more fall action, we'll see if that baby persists for a little while longer. All right, off with that. Thank goodness for so says Robin, we're able to legally capture water. Can you believe that wasn't legal? That and outside of neighbors who would rat or law enforcement that would be looking, nobody would know. Donna, good to see you out there. Not too windy today, was it? Not too hot and not too cool. It's my kind of day. In fact, Donna, we were fortunate enough to see the comet with a couple of nights ago, and that was kind of a nice gift. Neowise still standing in the northwestern sky, a good pair of 10 or 7 by 20 or 7 by 35 binoculars, kind of like a minimum to see it, but its light curve peaked as it approached the sun and has been dropping off rather rapidly. If you're in the city, you have to have binoculars. But if you're in a darker area and you have a clear vision or view out to the northwest, it's standing, oriented up and down right underneath the Big Dipper. So look at the Big Dipper in the northwestern sky, and it's between the Big Dipper, the bottom of the Big Dipper, and then the horizon. So it's always worth a good view. All right, guys, thanks for stopping on in here, and we'll be back tomorrow. Marlene, good to see you this evening, dropping on in. And if you just happen to catch this on replay, hashtag replay in the comments so we know you've given a stop by. But otherwise, hit my page, the Scott Stevens page, and sign up for notifications so you know when we go live, and you can pop in the chat box here and then communicate with us so we can kind of build this thing out. All right, thanks for coming in, and have a great evening, everybody, and stay safe. And as always, keep looking up.